Hey guys, tonight we're stepping gently back into a time when saving money felt like a small kind of magic, when a thin little stamp the colour of spring grass could turn an ordinary trip to the market into the very first step towards something you'd been wanting for months. We're talking about S&H Green Stamps, and the quiet, cheerful way they slipped into nearly every American household in the 1960s. Folded into kitchen drawers, pressed carefully into little books, dreamed over at the kitchen table long after the supper dishes were dried and put away. Before we settle in, I want to say a real thank you to the viewer who suggested this one. You send me some of the warmest ideas, and honestly, this whole channel grows because of the little notes you leave behind. It means more than you probably realise. If you are enjoying these slow trips backward, a like or a quiet comment helps others find their way here too, though there is no pressure at all tonight. And if you would rather drift off to these stories with your eyes already closed, the channel is now on Spotify as well. The link is waiting for you down in the description whenever you want it. Now go ahead and get comfortable. Dim the lights until the room goes soft and golden. Switch on a fan for that low, steady hush. Pull the blanket up to your shoulders, find the cool side of the pillow, and let the day loosen its grip on you. And let yourself wonder for a moment. What did a Saturday morning at the grocery store actually feel like in 1962? What did those little stamps taste like on the tip of your tongue when you licked them one by one? How many long evenings did a family spend filling their books, page by careful page, saving toward a toaster or a lamp or a brand new bicycle leaning in the window of a store downtown? What did the redemption centre smell like on the day you finally walk through its doors to carry your prize home? Let those questions settle. Let them carry you. And just like that, it is 1962. The screen door is swinging shut behind you. There is a paper sack of groceries balanced on your hip, and folded into your palm, still a little damp from the counter, is a short green strip of stamps. The afternoon is long and unhurried, and somewhere in a kitchen drawer at home, a half-filled book is already waiting for you. Let us start at the grocery store, where all of it begins. It is late morning, and the market hums with the sound of carts rolling over worn linoleum and the bright ring of the register up front. You set your items on the counter one by one, and the clerk in his white apron adds them with quick, practised fingers. Then, almost as an afterthought, he reaches for the little dispenser beside the till and pulls a strip of green stamps free, counting them out against the total of your bill. He slides them across with your change, and just like that, the day has given you something small to keep. You take them without much ceremony, the way you always do, folding the strip once and tucking it into the side pocket of your handbag, where it will ride home safely among the receipts and the loose coins. But even in that small, ordinary motion there is a quiet pleasure, a sense that the errand has paid you back for the trouble of coming out. The groceries you would have bought anyway. The stamps are the little something extra, the reward layered gently on top of a task you had to do regardless. The clerk knows you by now, the way clerks did in those years. He asks after your mother, comments on the weather, mentions that the good tomatoes came in this morning if you are quick about it. His hands never stop moving. He counts the stamps out with the same easy rhythm he uses for your change, and you can tell he has done it 10,000 times, that the little strip means nothing and everything all at once. A habit so worn into the day that no one thinks to question it. Around you the store carries on. A child begs softly for a candy bar near the front. A woman 2 aisles over compares the prices on 2 cans of coffee, holding one in each hand like a set of scales. The butcher's paper crinkles somewhere behind the meat counter. The air smells of cardboard and cold produce and the faint sweetness of the bakery shelf near the door. It is the smell of an ordinary Saturday, and you breathe it in without noticing you are doing it. You think, as you gather your bags, about the drawer at home where the strip will end up. You think about how many more of these little green ribbons it will take to reach the thing you've been quietly hoping for. Not a hunger, exactly. More a gentle pull, the pleasant weight of a plan slowly coming together. Each strip is a small deposit toward it, and there is comfort in knowing that even the most ordinary trip has moved you forward by a few careful stamps. The clerk hands you the last of your parcels and wishes you a good afternoon. You thank him, and you mean it, and you turn toward the door with your arms full and your handbag a little heavier than it was. The stamps are barely anything, a scrap of gummed paper no thicker than a page, and yet you would not dream of leaving them behind. To leave them would be to leave money on the counter, and no one you knew would ever do such a thing. Outside, the sun is high and warm, and the parking lot shimmers faintly with the heat coming off the pavement. You load the bags into the car with practiced care, the eggs on top, the bread where nothing will crush it. And before you slide behind the wheel, you take the strip out one more time just to look at it, the way a person looks at something they intend to keep. Green as new leaves, printed edge to edge with that familiar little emblem, faintly tacky along the back where the glue waits patiently for a tongue and a page. It is such a small thing. That is what strikes you, holding it there in the sunlight. Such a small, plain thing to carry so much wanting inside it. But that was the quiet genius of it all. The way an entire household could organize its little hopes around a strip of paper worth almost nothing on its own. Gathered together, saved faithfully, pressed page by page into a book, those nothings became something. A toaster, a lamp, a bicycle in a store window with a red ribbon on the handlebars. You slip the strip back into your handbag and start the car. The radio comes on low, some easy tune you half remember, and you pull out onto the road toward home with the groceries settling behind you and the stamps riding safe at your side. It is the kind of moment that leaves no mark on memory, ordinary as a glass of water, and yet these were the moments that made up the whole texture of a life back then. Small errands, small rewards, small forward steps taken so quietly that no one thought to call them anything at all. There is something worth sitting with in that before we move on. The way a whole culture of saving could begin with a gesture so slight you might have missed it if you blinked. A clerk's hand, a strip of green, a fold into a handbag, and the long, patient dream that started every single time right there at the counter. Look closer at the counter for a moment, because there is a small machine there you may have stopped noticing. It sits beside the register like a patient little helper, feeding out its ribbon of stamps in a soft mechanical rhythm you could set your afternoon to. One stamp for every dime you spent, more or less, though the arithmetic was never something you worried over. The clerk knew it by heart. You simply watched the green strip lengthen and felt, in some quiet corner of yourself, that this trip had been worth taking. It is a humble thing, that machine, and it asks nothing of you but your attention, which you rarely give it any more. Familiarity has made it invisible. It has always been there, squat and metal and faintly worn at the edges where 1,000 hands have brushed past it, and you have stopped seeing it the way you've stopped seeing the clock on the wall or the fan turning slowly overhead. It is simply part of the furniture of buying things, as ordinary as the drawer of the register itself. But watch it work. just this once, and there is a small satisfaction in it. The clerk feeds the total into it or sets the dial by memory, and the ribbon begins to advance, stamp after stamp clicking out in an even, unhurried line. There is a faint whir to it, a gentle mechanical exhale, and then the sharp little sound of the strip being torn free along its perforation. It is a sound you have heard so many times that you would know it anywhere. The small green punctuation at the end of every purchase. The counterman handles it without looking, the way a person handles anything they have done for years. His eyes stay on you, on the conversation, on the next customer already setting a basket down behind you, while his hands do the work on their own. Tier, count, slide across. He could probably do it in his sleep. Perhaps he does, some nights, the phantom rhythm of it following him home the way any job worth doing tends to follow a person into their dreams. And you, on the other side of the counter, feel the quiet pleasure of watching the strip grow. There is something in the human heart that likes to see a thing accumulate, to watch a small quantity become a slightly larger one before your eyes. The longer the total, the longer the ribbon, and so a big shopping day carried its own extra reward, a green strip so long you had to fold it twice to fit it away. On those days you left the store feeling almost wealthy, though you had of course spent more, not less. Every register in town had one of these little machines, and so the sound of them became part of the sound of commerce itself. Walk into any market, any service station, any department store, and there beneath the ring of the till you would hear that soft whir and tear, that gentle heartbeat of the whole arrangement. It was a sound that meant you were being taken care of, in a small way, that your loyalty was noticed, that the store was glad you had come and wanted you to come again. Because that, of course, was the whole quiet purpose of it. These stamps kept you coming back. You would drive a little farther, pass a shop that did not offer them, choose the grocer who did, all for the sake of the green strip and the book at home. The store knew this. The machine beside the register was not really a gift at all, but a gentle tether, a way of binding your habits to this counter and no other. And yet it never felt that way. It felt like kindness, and perhaps in its own strange way, it was. You watch the clerk tear the last stamp free and lay the strip across your palm, still warm, it always seemed, from the workings of the little machine, and you think how odd it is that so much wanting could be organised around such a modest contraption. A box of metal and gears no larger than a bread tin, humming away at the elbow of every register in America. It kept no grand ledger, it made no promises, it simply fed out its green ribbon, dime by dime, trip by trip, and left the dreaming to you. There were quieter versions and louder ones, older machines and newer ones, but they all did the same faithful work. And when a store was busy, when the line stretched back toward the produce and the afternoon light came slanting through the front windows, you could hear several of them going at once, a soft overlapping chorus of whirs and tears, the background music of a country patiently saving towards small comforts it could not otherwise quite afford. It is easy to overlook a machine like that, easy to walk past it 1,000 times and never once give it a thought, but it deserves a moment before we carry our stamps home, because it was the humble beginning of every book that ever got filled, every prize that ever got carried out of a redemption centre in a happy pair of arms. It all started here, at the elbow of the register, with a small green machine humming quietly to itself and asking only that you come back soon. Come home now into the kitchen and open the drawer beside the sink. This is where they live. A few saver books, some fat and finished, some barely begun. A scattering of loose stamps that never quite made it onto a page. a stub of pencil, a rubber band, the odds and ends of a household that saved without thinking twice about it. Every home had a drawer like this, a soft green secret tucked among the twine and the spare keys, quietly growing richer week by week. You slide it open, and there is that familiar small resistance, the drawer sticking slightly the way it always has, before it gives with a soft wooden scrape. Inside is the gentle disorder of a family's practical life. The books sit toward the back where they will not be jostled. The loose stamps drift toward the front, a few of them stuck lightly to one another, a few to the bottom of the drawer itself where a drop of something once fell and dried. You gather the new strip from your handbag and lay it in with the rest, and the drawer is a little fuller than it was this morning. It is not a tidy drawer. No one's was. It was the working drawer, the everyday drawer, the one that caught whatever needed catching in the course of an ordinary week. Beside the stamps you might find a spool of thread, a book of matches from a restaurant downtown, a screw that came loose from something and was set here for safekeeping and then forgotten, a child's marble, a grocery list from a week gone by, its errands all long since run. The drawer held the small sediment of daily living, and the stamps settled down into it like everything else. But the stamps were the treasure of the drawer, and everyone in the house knew it. The thread could be replaced at any notion counter. The matches meant nothing, but the stamps were savings, real and slowly accumulating, and so they held a quiet importance that the other odds and ends did not. When the drawer got too full, it was the stamps you sorted first, the stamps you smoothed and counted and set in order, while the rest was simply pushed aside or thrown away. There was a particular smell to that drawer when you opened it, faint and hard to name, a little of dry paper, a little of the wood itself warmed by the afternoon sun coming through the kitchen window, a little of the glue on the backs of the stamps, sweetish and faintly chemical. It was the smell of thrift, if thrift can be said to have a smell, and it was so woven into the ordinary air of the house that you would only ever notice it years later, catching it somewhere by accident and being pulled back all at once to this exact drawer, this exact kitchen, this exact quiet afternoon. The children knew not to make off with the loose stamps for their own amusement. This was understood gently and firmly from an early age. The stamps were for the books, and the books were for the family, and to fritter them away on nonsense was a small betrayal of the whole slow project everyone was working toward together. And so, even the youngest learned to treat that drawer with a certain care, to slide it open and closed with respect, to take from it only when told. You leave the drawer open for a moment and look at what is there. A finished book, thick and slightly swollen with all its pasted stamps, ready to be redeemed the moment you can find the time to drive downtown. A book only half begun, its later pages still showing their empty green grid. A messy handful of loose ones waiting for the next pasting night. It is not much. A stranger looking in would see only clutter, but you see the shape of a plan, the patient middle of something, the ordinary in-between of a household saving toward a comfort it has decided it deserves. Every home had its version of this. In some it was a drawer, in others a shelf in the pantry or a box on the top of the icebox or a cubby in the writing desk in the front room. But wherever it lived, it served the same purpose, a small designated place where the stamps could gather and wait. A little green account kept not in a bank but in the warm, worn interior of the house itself close at hand, tended in the odd free moments of a busy week. You slide the drawer shut again, gently, feeling it catch and give and settle home. The stamps go back into their soft darkness beside the twine and the spare keys, quietly doing what they do, which is to grow, and you turn back to the business of the afternoon, the supper to start, the counter to wipe, the 100 small tasks of a household. But somewhere in the back of your mind sits the pleasant knowledge of that drawer, and all the slow wealth waiting patiently inside it, growing a few stamps richer with every trip to the store. It is evening now, and the table has been cleared. You spread the day's stamps in front of you and begin. There is a particular taste to this, faintly sweet, faintly of paper, the taste of the glue on the back of each stamp as you press your tongue to it. You could dampen a sponge in a saucer of water if you preferred, and many did, but most people simply licked one after another until their tongues went a little dry and the whole thing became as natural as breathing. The kitchen is quiet at this hour, the supper dishes drying in the rack, the light overhead casting its warm circle down onto the table, where the books lie open. Outside the window the evening is settling in, the sky going soft at the edges, a neighbour's screen door banging once and then falling still. Inside, it is only you and the stamps and the slow, patient work of putting them where they belong. You take a stamp between your fingers, turn it over, touch it to your tongue. There's the taste again, that faint gummed sweetness you would know anywhere. It is not pleasant exactly, and it is not unpleasant either. It simply is the taste of the task, as familiar as the taste of the envelope you seal or the postage you fix to a letter. Some people claim to hate it. Some claimed a fondness for it they were half embarrassed to admit. Most simply did it, the way you do the small necessary things of a life, without much thought either way. The trick was to wet the back just enough, not too much. Too dry and the stamp would not hold, would lift its corners the moment you turn the page. Too wet and the glue would go slick and slide, and the stamp would drift out of its square and dry crooked, a small permanent flaw in an otherwise orderly page. You learned the right amount without ever being taught it, the way you learn the weight of a handshake or the pressure of a pencil. Your tongue simply knew. Press the stamp down into its little square and smooth it flat with the side of your thumb. Hold it a moment while the glue takes, then reach for the next. There is a rhythm to it that takes over after a while, tongue and thumb and reach, tongue and thumb and reach, and your mind is free to wander wherever it likes, while your hands carry on the work on their own. You think about the day. You think about tomorrow. You think about nothing at all, which is perhaps the finest thing to think about at the end of a long day. The sponge in the saucer was the tidier way, and the careful ones kept to it. A little water, a light dab, no taste at all, and no dry tongue at the end. But there was something about the sponge that felt like cheating, or at least like keeping the whole business at arm's length, and many people never took to it. To lick the stamp was to be truly in the middle of the work, to taste it, to feel it, to give a small part of yourself over to the saving. The sponge was sensible. The tongue was faithful. By the time you're a dozen stamps in, your tongue has gone a little dry, a little tacky, and you pause to sip from the glass of water at your elbow. This too is part of the ritual, the small break, the wetting of the mouth before you carry on. The children, when they helped, would complain of it loudly, sticking out their tongues and making faces, and you would laugh and tell them to use the sponge if they liked, and they would go on licking anyway because the sponge was somehow less fun. There is a meditative quality to it, this slow evening work. No radio sometimes, just the quiet of the house and the small sounds of your own doing. The soft tear as you separate one stamp from the next, the whisper of the page turning, the faint smack of your own lips. It asks nothing of you but time and a little patience, and it gives back that rare and simple pleasure of a task with a visible end, a page filling square by square until it is full, and you may turn to the next. You lick another, press it down, smooth it flat. The page is nearly complete now, only a few squares still showing their empty green. You feel that small building satisfaction, the near doneness of it, the wanting to finish before you set it aside for the night. So you carry on a little longer than you meant to, one more stamp and then one more, until at last the page is full, every square filled, and you sit back and look at it with the plain contentment of a thing completed. It is a humble pleasure, the licking and the pasting, and it would be easy to laugh at this business of a grown person wetting scraps of paper at the kitchen table night after night. But it was one of the small quiet rituals that held a household's evenings together, that gave the hours after supper a gentle shape and purpose. And that taste, faintly sweet, faintly of paper, would stay with a person all their life, ready to come flooding back at the first accidental encounter, carrying the whole warm evening with it. Open the book flat on the table and look at how it is made. Each page is printed with a grid of little squares, each square waiting for a single stamp, and every page you filled brought you measurably closer to something real. A finished book held 1,200 stamps in all, and there was a plain satisfaction in seeing a page go from empty to complete, from possibility to progress. The book was humble, just paper and glue, and yet it held the shape of a small family dream. It is a slight thing to hold the book, no heavier than a pamphlet when it is empty, its cover soft and its pages thin. There is nothing grand about it. It cost the store nothing, and it cost you nothing, handed out freely to anyone who asked, and yet in its plain pages lay the whole architecture of the saving. Without the book, the stamps were just loose scraps, drifting and easily lost. With it, they became a record, a running total, a thing you could hold in your hand and measure your progress by. Run your finger down the grid of a fresh page. The little squares wait in their neat rows, each one exactly the size of a single stamp, printed pale so the green would show bright against it once a stamp was pressed home. There is an orderliness to it that pleases the eye, a promise of the tidiness to come. An empty page is all potential, every square a small future task, and there is a particular pleasure in beginning one, in pressing that first stamp into that first square and knowing the whole clean expanse lies ahead. And there is an even greater pleasure in a page nearly done. When only a few squares remain, when the green is spread across almost the whole of it, you find yourself hurrying a little, wanting to see it complete. The finished page is a small triumph, filled edge to edge, no gaps, no crooked stamps, a thing you can look at and know you made. You turn it, and there behind it is the next, empty and waiting, and the slow work begins again. The full book held 1,200 stamps across all its pages, and to fill one entirely was no small thing. It took weeks of faithful shopping, sometimes longer, a great many trips to the store and the station and the shops downtown. And so a finished book carried real weight, not in the hand but in the meaning. It stood for a season of ordinary errands, all those small green rewards gathered up and pressed into order, transformed at last from scattered nothing into something worth carrying downtown to redeem. The children liked to count the pages, to figure how many stamps were left before a book was done, to hold a fat finished book in two hands and marvel at its heft. There were game in it for them, a way of making the slow saving feel like progress they could see and touch. how many more they would ask, and you would tell them, and they would sigh at the largeness of the number, or brighten at the smallness of it, depending. You kept the finished books apart from the working ones, the done from the doing. The finished ones were ready, complete, waiting only for the trip to the redemption centre. The working ones were the present tense of the saving, the ones you carried the day's stamps home to, and the barely begun ones were the future, the next dream already taking its first shape, a single page filled and a long clean stretch of empty grid ahead. It is worth pausing over how much the book asked of you, and how little it gave in return except the giving itself. It kept no interest, it paid no bonus. A stamp saved was worth exactly a stamp, no more, and the whole long labour of filling a book earned you only what those stamps were plainly worth. And yet people filled them by the millions, faithfully, night after night, because the book made the saving real. It gave shape to patience. It turned a vague wish into a countable, fillable, finishable thing. Look at the book once more before you set it aside for the night, its filled pages and its empty ones, its neat green grid marching square by square toward the small comfort you have decided your family deserves. It is such a modest object. A stranger might toss it out without a second glance. But you know what it holds, or rather what it promises, and you close it gently and lay it in the drawer with the care it has more than earned. Just paper and glue and the shape of a dream, waiting patiently to be filled. Let us step back outside to the service station on the corner. The attendant comes out to meet you, wipes the windshield, checks the oil without being asked, and fills the tank while you wait. And when he takes your money, he hands back stamps along with it, because the gas station gave them too, just like the grocer. Fuel for the car, and fuel for the book at home. You tuck the strip into the glove box and drive off, the afternoon smelling of gasoline and warm asphalt. You had not thought of the gas station as part of the saving, not at first. It was simply where you went when the needle dropped low, a necessary stop on the ordinary rounds of the week. But then one day the attendant handed a green strip back along with your change, and you realized the stamps were here too, waiting at yet another counter, folded into yet another everyday errand. And after that you never quite saw the station the same way again. The attendant is a familiar figure in his cap and his coveralls with his name stitched over the pocket. He comes out at the sound of the bell as your tires cross the hose, and he greets you by name and asks how many gallons you would like. Fill it up, you tell him, more often than not, and he sets the nozzle and lets it run while he sees to the rest. He is quick and thorough, and takes a plain pride in his work, and the whole thing has the feel of being genuinely looked after. He wipes the windshield with long, practiced strokes front and back, clearing away the dust and the smashed remains of the summer's insects. He lifts the hood and checks the oil, holding the dipstick up to the light and wiping it and dipping it again, and he tops it off if it wants topping, and tells you whether the tires look low. All of this without being asked. All of this simply part of what a station did in those years, when service was a word that meant something, and a full tank was only the beginning of the transaction. And then the money changes hands, and with it the stamps. The attendant counts them out against the total the same way the grocer does, tearing the strip free and passing it through the window with your change. Fuel for the car, and fuel for the book at home. You had come only to defill the tank, and you leave with your savings a little larger too, the day quietly generous in its small way, as it so often was. There was a real cleverness in it, the way the stamps reached into every corner of a family's spending. Not just the groceries, which you would buy no matter what, but the gasoline too, and the goods from the department store, and a dozen other ordinary purchases besides. Wherever your money went in the course of a week, the stamps followed, gathering it all together into a single slow stream that emptied, in the end, into the book in the kitchen drawer. You could hardly spend $1 without earning a little green toward your dream. You tuck the strip into the glove box, where a few others already wait, folded and forgotten from earlier trips. The glove box was its own small satellite of the kitchen drawer, a place where the car's share of the stamps collected until you remembered to bring them inside. Sometimes they sat there for weeks, riding along on every errand before you finally gathered them up and carried them to the house to join the rest. Sometimes you found an old strip wedged in the back, weeks or months forgotten, and it was like finding a little money you did not know you had. The station falls behind you as you pull back onto the road, and the afternoon smells of what it always smelled of at such moments: gasoline and warm asphalt and the faint tang of the oily rag the attendant kept in his back pocket. It is not a pretty smell, and yet there is something in it that stays with a person, some association with movement and errand, and the ordinary freedom of having somewhere to go and a full tank to get you there. You breathe it in without meaning to, and it settles somewhere in the memory to be caught again years later at some other station and carry you straight back. It is easy to forget how completely the stamps wove themselves through daily life, how there was scarcely a routine errand that did not offer them. We remember the grocery store because that is where most of them came from, but it was the sum of all the small sources, the station, and the shops and the counters everywhere that filled the books so faithfully. A little from here, a little from there, gathered up trip by trip until the drawer was full and the dream was near. Even the humble business of filling the family car played its quiet part. Now watch the mailbox, because today it holds something wonderful. The S&H catalogue has arrived, thick and glossy and full of promise, and everyone in the house wants a look at it. In its heyday, this little book was said to be one of the most widely printed publications in the whole country, more common in American homes than almost anything else you could name. You carry it inside like a small treasure, already turning the pages before you've even reached the kitchen. The mail comes in the early afternoon, and most days it holds nothing to quicken the pulse: bills and circulars and the occasional letter from a relative far away. But today, wedged in among the ordinary post is the catalogue, and you feel a small lift the moment you see it. There it is, thick and shining, its cover bright with promise, and you pull it free of the rest of the mail and let the bills fall where they may. Everything else can wait. You carry it up the walk, already opening it, unable to hold off even the length of the front hall. The pages are glossy and slick under your fingers, printed in colour where so much of the world in those days was still grey, and they catch the light as you turn them. The smell of the fresh ink rises up, that particular clean chemical sweetness of a brand new catalogue, and it is a smell that means good things, that means wanting and planning and the pleasure of choosing. By the time you reach the kitchen, you're already deep in its pages, and it is not long before the others gather round. The children come running at the news of it. Someone leans over your shoulder. A younger one climbs onto the neighbouring chair to see. The catalogue has that pull, that gathering power, and for a little while the whole household bends toward it, forgetting whatever else it had been doing, drawn in by the bright pages and the endless things they showed. For this was no ordinary book. In its best years it was printed and mailed in such staggering numbers that it was said to be among the most widely distributed publications in the entire country, turning up in more homes than almost anything else you could name. It was everywhere. Every family with a stamp book had one, or had one, or was waiting for the next to arrive. And so its pages became a kind of shared national daydream. The same toaster and the same wristwatch and the same folding table longed over at 1,000,000 kitchen tables all at once. You settle in with it properly now, the mail forgotten on the counter, and begin to turn the pages with real attention. Here are the small appliances gleaming in their photographs. Here is the luggage, stacked in handsome sets. Here are the toys, the tools, the lamps, the linens, page after page of ordinary comforts made to look, in the bright catalogue light, like small marvels. And beside each one, the number of books it would cost, printed plainly so you could begin at once to calculate and dream. The children have their own interests, of course, and they turn quickly past the household goods to find the toys, the bicycles, the games, and they point and exclaim and begin their campaigns then and there. Look at this one, they say. Look how many books. Could we? Might we? If we saved. And you tell them to be patient, that saving takes time, that these things do not come all at once, and they nod and go on dreaming anyway, which is exactly as it should be. There was a genius in the catalogue quite apart from the stamps themselves. It gave the saving a destination. Without it, the stamps were only a habit, a vague accumulation toward some unnamed good. With it, you could see precisely what you were working toward, could hold the picture of it in your mind through all the long weeks of filling books, could point to the very page and say, "That one, that is the thing." The catalogue turned patience into anticipation, and anticipation is a far sweeter thing to live inside. You will keep this catalogue close for months until the next one comes to replace it. It will live on the shelf or the side table or the top of the icebox, always within reach, pulled down again and again whenever a spare moment allowed for a little dreaming. Its pages will soften at the corners from all the handling. Certain pages will fall open on their own, worn to the favourites, the things most longed for. And through it all, it'll do its quiet work, keeping the whole family gently pointed toward the small comforts that the stamps, book by faithful book, were slowly bringing within reach. Sit down with the catalogue open under the kitchen light. This is where the real pleasure lives, not in the spending but in the wanting. A toaster on this page, a set of luggage on that one, a lamp, a wristwatch, a wagon for the children. You run your finger down the columns of stamp values and do the gentle math in your head, weighing how many books each thing would take and how many weeks that might mean. It is the kind of slow, hopeful daydreaming that is harder to come by now. The supper is done and the kitchen is settling into its evening quiet. The dishes are drying. The light overhead pools warm and yellow on the tabletop. And here you are with the catalogue spread open before you, and no particular need to be anywhere else, and the whole soft length of the evening in which to want things. It is one of the small luxuries of the day, this unhurried dreaming, and you give yourself over to it gladly. You turn to the pages you know best, the ones your fingers find on their own by now. Here is the toaster you've half decided on, chrome and handsome, and you look again at how many books it would take and turn the figure over in your mind. Not so very many. A few more weeks of faithful shopping, perhaps, and it could be yours. You let yourself picture it there on the counter, gleaming, and the picture is nearly as good as the having. And here, on another page, is something grander, something further off, a set of luggage, matched and handsome, the kind you would want if you ever took the trip you sometimes let yourself imagine. It would take many books, more than you have any hope of filling soon, but that does not stop the wanting. If anything, it sweetens it. the far-off dream more delicious for being far off, a thing to save towards slowly across a whole long stretch of ordinary weeks. You run your finger down the columns of numbers and do the arithmetic in your head, the way you have done it 100 times before. So many books for this, so many more for that. So many stamps to a book, so many trips to the store to earn a book, so many weeks of trips to reach the thing itself. The math is not hard, but it is pleasant. The way it turns a vague desire into a plan, into a schedule, into a small and certain future you can almost reach out and touch. This was the true heart of the whole arrangement, if you think about it. Not the stamps, not the books, not even the prizes themselves. The dreaming, the long, slow anticipation, stretched out across months. The pleasure of wanting a thing and knowing you are slowly earning your way toward it. There was a richness in that waiting that the thing itself could never quite match. The toaster, once it came, was only a toaster. But the wanting of it, the planning for it, the evenings spent over the catalogue imagining it, those were their own small happiness. The children drift in and out as you dream, adding their own wants to the mix. The youngest lobbies for a wagon, pointing to it insistently, asking how many books, asking when. An older one has found a wristwatch and gone quiet with longing over it. You listen, and you weigh their wishes against your own and against the slow arithmetic of the books, and you make no promises, but you make no refusals either. There is room in the dreaming for everyone. That is part of its warmth. It is a kind of pleasure that has grown scarce, this. We're so used now to having what we want the moment we want it, to reaching for a thing and simply taking it, that the long, patient wanting of the catalogue age can be hard even to remember. But there was something in it worth keeping, something the speed of later years quietly took away. The anticipation was half the gift, the saving was half the joy. And an evening spent dreaming over a catalogue, wanting slowly and well, was an evening that gave back more than it seemed to cost. Eventually the light grows late, and the catalogue must be closed and set back on its shelf, the dreaming folded away until tomorrow. But it leaves you with something, a warmth, a direction, a small clear picture of a good to come. You will carry that picture with you through the ordinary errands of the week, and it will make even the dullest trip to the store feel like a step towards something. That was the quiet magic of it. It turned the whole plain business of living into a slow walk toward a small and certain joy. It is Thursday now, and there is a small buzz in the aisles. The market is running a double stamp day, and everyone seems to have found a reason to shop. Twice the usual stamps for every $1 spent, the sign in the window promises, and so the carts fill a little fuller and the register runs a little longer. You did not strictly need this much, but a day like this felt like a gift you would be foolish to refuse. You leave with heavy bags and a very long green strip indeed. The word had gone round, the way word did, over the back fence and at the church door and in the small talk of the week, double stamps on Thursday. And so when Thursday came, the market was fuller than usual, the parking lot crowded, the aisles busier, everyone somehow finding themselves in need of a few more things than they might have bought on an ordinary day. The store knew exactly what it was doing, and the shoppers knew too, and came anyway, and both sides were pleased. There is a sign in the front window, bright and cheerful, announcing the occasion to all who pass. Double stamps today, it says, and the words carry a small thrill even to those who'd already heard. Twice the green for every $1. It is not that anything is cheaper, mind you, the prices are just the same as ever. But the reward is doubled, and somehow that makes all the difference, makes a person feel they're getting ahead, coming out a little richer than they went in. You take your cart down the aisles and you find yourself reaching for things you might otherwise have left for next week. That larger sack of flour, since you will use it eventually. The extra tins of this and that, stocking the shelf a little deeper than usual. It is not waste, you tell yourself. Only good sense. Only taking advantage of a day that comes but seldom. And there is truth in that, though there is also the store's quiet cleverness in it. The way a double stamp day loosened the purse and filled the cart fuller than any ordinary Thursday ever would. The register runs longer today under the weight of all these fuller carts, and the little machine beside it hums and tears without much rest, feeding out its doubled ribbons of green. You watch the clerk count out your strip, and it is a long one, longer than any ordinary trip would earn, and there is real satisfaction in the length of it. 2 pages worth, perhaps, or near enough. Enough to make a genuine dent in the book at home. Enough to feel that the day has truly paid you back. Around you the other shoppers share in the same quiet pleasure. You catch a neighbour 2 aisles over with her cart piled high, and she gives you a knowing smile. Both of you a little sheepish at having been drawn in. Both of you glad of it all the same. There is a companionable feeling to a double stamp day, a sense of everyone in on the same small game, everyone bending their week's shopping toward the same bright Thursday for the same green reward. You did not strictly need this much. You know that, loading the heavy bags into the car, feeling the weight of them, thinking of the shelves at home already fuller than they were. But a day like this felt like a gift you would be foolish to refuse, and so you did not refuse it. And now the pantry will carry you a little further, and the book will fill a little faster, and the dream will come a little sooner. It all works out, you tell yourself. And mostly it did. There was a rhythm to these promotions, the stores taking their turns, this one doing double stamps on Thursday and that one on some other day, each trying to draw the week's shopping toward its own doors. A careful shopper could plan around them, could time the big trips to fall on the double days, could squeeze a little extra green from every dollar with a bit of forethought. It became a small strategy, a household art, the timing of the shopping to the promotions, and those who mastered it filled their books noticeably faster than those who did not. You drive home with the heavy bags settling behind you, and the long green strip riding safe at your side, and you feel the particular contentment of a good day's shopping well timed. Tonight there will be a real session at the kitchen table, more stamps than usual to lick and paste, a book advancing by leaps rather than the ordinary slow crawl. And the dream, whatever it is this season, will sit a little nearer than it did this morning. A double stamp day was a small thing, but it was the kind of small thing that made the whole patient business feel, now and then, like it was truly getting somewhere. Let us pause over the numbers because the numbers were half the fun. Everyone in the house knew the going rates by heart. So many books for the mixer, so many more for the folding table. A small item might take a book or 2, a proper prize might take 10 or 12, and the truly grand things could take a year of faithful shopping. You kept a running tally in your mind the way you kept the grocery list, and every trip to the store moved the figure a little closer to done. It was a household kind of arithmetic, this, learned not from any school book but from the catalogue and the drawer, and the long, slow experience of saving. You knew, without needing to look, roughly what the things you wanted would cost in books. The figures lived in your head the way a recipe did, or the multiplication tables, worn smooth by use until they came without effort. Ask any member of the family how many books the toaster would take, and they could tell you near enough on the spot. The small things were the easy ones. A book or 2, perhaps, for some modest little item, a kitchen gadget or a child's toy. the kind of prize you could reach in a matter of weeks. These were the quick rewards, the ones that kept the whole enterprise feeling alive, that gave a family the pleasure of redeeming something now and then rather than saving forever toward a single distant goal. A small prize every so often kept the spirits up and the habit strong. The proper prizes asked for more, 10 or 12 books sometimes, a serious stretch of saving, months of faithful shopping pressed page by page into order. These were the things you planned for, the mix of the kitchen, the folding table for the porch, the lamp for the front room. You did not reach them quickly, but you reached them, and the reaching was part of the pleasure, the slow, steady climb toward a goal you could see growing nearer with every book you finished. And then there were the grand things, the ones that could take a year or more of unbroken saving, every stamp faithfully gathered, every book carefully filled, the whole household bending its ordinary spending toward one shining distant goal. A piece of furniture, perhaps, something for the whole family to use and enjoy for years. These were the epics of the stamp-saving life, the long patient campaigns that tested a family's discipline and rewarded it, in the end, with something none of them could easily have bought outright. You kept the running tally in your head the way you kept the grocery list, a figure always quietly present, always being updated. So many books toward the goal, so many stamps in the working book, so many more trips to the store before the next book was done. Every purchase moved the figure, every double stamp day moved it further. And you tracked it all without ever writing it down. The arithmetic simply part of the ongoing background hum of a mind tending a household. The children learned this arithmetic early and took to it with the fierce interest children bring to anything that involves the getting of things they want. They knew exactly how many books stood between them and the wagon, the bicycle, the game. They counted the stamps in the drawer. They asked endlessly, how many more, how much longer are we nearly there? And you answered, patiently, giving them the figures, teaching them without meaning to the long, slow discipline of saving toward a thing you cannot have all at once. There was a value in that arithmetic quite apart from the prizes it pointed toward. It taught patience, plainly, and it taught planning, and it taught the simple truth that good things come to those who gather them slowly. A child raised on the stamp book learned in his bones that you could not have everything the moment you wanted it, that some things were worth waiting for, that a want fed steadily over months was a different and perhaps a finer thing than a want satisfied at once. These were lessons the arithmetic taught without ever announcing itself as a lesson at all, and so the numbers ran quietly on, in the back of every mind in the house, all through the ordinary business of the weeks. So many books for the mixer, so many more for the table, the figures shifting, closing, the goal creeping nearer trip by trip and book by book. It was a small, persistent mathematics of hope, the running sum of a family's patience, and every stamp licked and pasted at the kitchen table moved it, however slightly, toward the day when the tally would at last read done, and the long saving would give way to the sweetness of the prize. Bring the children in now, because this was often their job. The stamps are spread across the table, the books are open, and small fingers work away at the pasting with more enthusiasm than precision. Some pages come out crooked, a few stamps go on upside down, but the work gets done, and there is laughter in it, and a nickel or a promise offered as reward. It was a chore, yes, but it was the good kind, the kind that kept a family sitting together a little longer on an ordinary night. You call them in from wherever they have scattered, the yard or the front room or the foot of the stairs, and they come with the mixed reluctance and eagerness that children bring to any task that is half work and half play. There is grumbling, a little, for form's sake. But there is also a scramble for the best chairs, the ones nearest the good light, and a quick negotiation over who gets which book. And before long the grumbling has given way to the small industry of the thing. You dole out the stamps in fair shares, a little pile before each child, and set the books open and ready. And then the pasting begins, and it is a sight to watch. The little ones bend low over their work, tongues poking from the corners of their mouths in concentration, wetting each stamp with great ceremony, and pressing it down with the whole flat of a small, determined hand. The older ones work faster, more sure of themselves, though not always more neatly for all their speed. The pages, it must be said, do not always come out well. A stamp goes down crooked and stays crooked. Another lands upside down and is left that way, its little emblem standing on its head, because to peel it up and start again would be more trouble than the floor is worth. A younger child, licking too eagerly, gets the glue too wet and the stamp slides and buckles, and there are near tears over it until you smooth things over and set them back to work. It is not fine craftsmanship, but it is honest work, and it fills the pages, and that is what matters in the end. And oh, there is laughter in it. The children make a game of it, as children make a game of everything, racing to see who can fill a page first, teasing one another over the crooked ones, making faces at the taste of the glue. Someone sticks a stamp to his own forehead and wears it proudly. Someone else pretends to lick a stamp and licks a sibling's arm instead, and there is shrieking and giggling and a brief happy chaos before order is restored. The kitchen fills with the small warm noise of children at ease, and the work goes on around the play, and somehow both get done. You keep a gentle watch over it all, refilling the piles, settling the disputes, admiring the finished pages held up for your approval. That is a fine page, you say, and mean it, even if it is not truly fine at all, because the pride in the small face looking up at you is worth far more than a perfectly pasted page. There will be time enough in life for perfect work. Tonight is for the doing of it together, for the warmth of small hands busy at a shared task, for the family gathered close around a single circle of lamplight on an ordinary night. There was usually a reward on offer to keep the enthusiasm up. A nickel for the one who filled the most pages, a later bedtime, a promise of some small treat come the weekend. It did not take much. The work was not truly hard, only tedious, and a child would do a great deal of tedium for a nickel and the pleasure of being useful. And so the bargain was struck week after week, the small wage traded for the small labour, and everyone came out satisfied. But the true reward, though no child would have named it so, was the sitting together. In a busy household, with all its comings and goings, its separate tasks and separate corners, there were not so many hours when the whole family gathered in one place, with nothing pulling them apart. The pasting of the stamps made such an hour, reliably, week after week. It gave a reason to sit down together, to talk of the day, to laugh over nothing, to be simply and warmly in one another's company for a little while, before the night carried everyone off to bed. You would not have called it precious at the time. It was only the stamp pasting, only a chore to be got through, only the small, ordinary business of a Thursday evening. But looking back, from a distance of years, those hours take on a glow they never seem to have in the moment. The lamplight, the small bent heads, the crooked pages and the sticky fingers and the easy laughter. The whole family gathered close around the kitchen table, doing together a thing that mattered not at all, and mattered more than almost anything. The pages fill, one by one, crooked and honest. The piles of loose stamps dwindle, and when the last one is pressed home, the children scatter again to their beds and their play, leaving you with the finished books and the quiet and the small warm ache of an evening well spent. It was a chore, yes, but it was the good kind, the kind that held a family together a little longer on an ordinary night, and there are far worse things for a task to do than that. Every family had someone who took it most seriously, and often it was grandmother. She kept a shoebox in the hall closet, packed with loose stamps and half-finished books, some of them saved for years toward a single, particular thing. She would not be rushed, and she would not waste a single stamp. When you visited, she might press a strip into your hand to add to your own book, waving off your thanks as though it were nothing at all. To her it was patience made visible. She'd come up in harder years, grandmother, in a time when nothing was wasted because nothing could be, when every scrap and string and stub was kept against the day it might be needed. And so the stamps found in her a natural home, a saver born to the saving, someone who understood in her bones the slow accumulation of small things into large ones. Where you might let a stray stamp go, she never would. Where you might grow impatient, she never did. To her the whole business was not a novelty or a game, but simply the right way to do things, the only sensible way. The shoebox lived in the hall closet, on the shelf where she could reach it, and it was full, always, packed tight with the fruits of her patient saving. There were loose stamps by the hundreds, gathered but not yet pasted, waiting their turn. There were books in every state of completion, some barely begun, some very nearly done, one or two finished and set aside for the great redemption she was working toward. And over it all lay the faint, sweetish smell of old glue and older cardboard, the smell of years of faithful gathering kept close in a box that had once held a pair of Sunday shoes. She was saving toward something particular, always. It might take years, and she did not mind if it did. She had her eye on a single grand prize, some fine thing for the house that she wanted properly, and would have properly or not at all, and she bent every stamp toward it, with a single-mindedness that the rest of the family could only marvel at. She would not be diverted by the small quick prizes that tempted the children. She wanted the one good thing, and she was willing to wait however long the wanting took, and she would not waste a stamp. This was a point of principle with her, near enough to a moral law. A stamp let slip, a strip left behind on a counter, a book pasted carelessly so that stamps were spoiled, these were small sins in her eyes, little betrayals of the whole patient enterprise. She smoothed every stamp before she pasted it. She checked every page for gaps. She kept her books in perfect order, no crooked stamps, no upside-down ones, every square filled, square and true. Her pages were works of quiet craftsmanship, and she took a plain deep pride in them that she would never have admitted to. When you came to visit, there was often a moment when she would reach into the shoebox and press a small strip of stamps into your hand. "For your book," she would say, and wave off your thanks before you'd half finished offering them, as though it were the most natural thing in the world, as though a gift of stamps were no gift at all, but simply what one did. And perhaps to her it was. She had more than she could paste, gathered faster than she could use, and it pleased her to pass a little along to the young ones, to seed their books with a bit of her own faithful surplus. The children loved her for it, of course, though they did not understand it. To them the strip of stamps was simply a treat, a small windfall to be carried home and added to the family's store. They did not see the years of patience behind it, the daily discipline of a woman who had never in her life let a thing go to waste. They saw only that grandmother gave good gifts, and they loved her, and that was enough. The understanding would come later, if it came at all, in the slow way that understanding of our elders tends to come, long after the chance to say so has passed. To her, though, the whole business meant something the children could not have named. It was patience made visible. It was the proof, held in a shoebox in the hall closet, that a small thing done faithfully over a long time truly did add up to something, that the slow way was the sure way, that a person who did not grasp and did not waste and did not hurry would in the end have all she needed, and a little to give away besides. The stamps were not really about the prize at all. They were about a whole way of meeting the world, patient and thrifty and unhurried, that she had lived by all her days. There is a grandmother like that in the memory of nearly everyone who lived through those years, someone who took the saving more seriously than anyone else, who kept the fullest box and the neatest books and the longest patience. And there is a lesson tucked in that shoebox too, quiet as the stamps themselves, about the worth of doing small things faithfully, about the strange abundance that comes to those who never waste and never rush. She is gone now, most likely, that grandmother, but the shoebox, in the memory, stays full. Sometimes a dream was simply too big for one household to reach alone, and so people pooled what they had. A daughter would hand over her extra books to help her mother finish a set of dishes. A brother would trade his stamps for a favour owed. Whole families quietly combined their savings toward a shared prize, a piece of furniture, perhaps, that everyone would use. There was a kind of closeness in it, a way of turning small individual efforts into something no one could have managed on their own. The grandest prizes in the catalogue were beyond the reach of any single household saving at its ordinary pace. A fine piece of furniture, a large appliance, something that would take not months but years to reach alone. And so, quite naturally, people began to combine. Why should each save separately toward the same distant goal, filling their own slow books in their own slow time, when together they might reach it in a fraction of the while? The logic was plain, and the warmth of it was plainer still. A daughter, newly married and just starting out, might have stamps to spare and no pressing need of her own, and she would carry her extra books over to her mother's house and add them to the family store. For the dishes, she would say, the good set her mother had wanted for years, and the two of them would sit at the kitchen table and merge their savings, page into page, book into book, the goal leaping suddenly nearer with the joining of their efforts. Among the wider family, the stamps became a small currency of their own, passed and traded and given as the needs of the household shifted. A brother might hand over a book or two in settlement of some favour owed, some help with the moving or the harvest or the fixing of a fence. Stamps changed hands at holidays, tucked into cards, pressed into palms at the door. They were not money quite, but they were near enough to it in that small economy of kin, and they moved through the family the way small kindnesses always had, binding it a little closer with each exchange. When a truly large prize was in view, the whole family might turn its saving toward it together. A grandmother's long-hoarded books, a daughter's surplus, a son's grudging contribution, all gathered into a single mighty store and counted up with rising excitement as the total climbed toward the goal. There was a real thrill in watching it grow, in seeing what none could have managed alone come slowly within reach through the joining of many small efforts. The prize, when at last it was won, belonged to everyone who had given toward it, and that shared ownership was itself a kind of prize, and the thing they reached for together was more often than not a thing they would share. A piece of furniture for the family home, a table around which they would all gather, a comfort that would serve them all for years to come. It made sense to pool towards such things, the shared saving matched to the shared use, everyone giving and everyone benefiting. There was a rightness to it that went beyond the mere arithmetic of reaching the goal sooner. It was the family providing for itself, as families always had, each according to what they could spare. There was a closeness in all this pooling and trading and giving that was worth as much as any prize. It kept the family in one another's affairs, in the good way, gave them reasons to gather and count and plan together, made of the saving a shared enterprise rather than a private one. You knew what your mother was saving toward, and she knew what you had to spare, and the stamps flowed between you in a steady small current of mutual regard. It was one more thread in the web that held a family together, one more small occasion for the giving and receiving that is the whole quiet substance of kinship. The children, watching, learned from it too. They saw the stamps pass from hand to hand, saw the surplus of one household make up the shortfall of another, saw a thing too big for one reached easily by many working together. It taught them something about family, about how the strong carried the weak and the fortunate helped the pressed, about how a burden shared was lighter and a joy shared was greater. They could not have put it into words, but they absorbed it all the same, sitting at the table while the books were merged and counted, taking in the plain daily lesson of a family that provided for its own. It is a way of doing things that has grown rarer, this pooling of small resources toward shared ends. We are more separate now, more inclined to reach for what we want alone and by our own means. But there was wisdom in the old way, and warmth, and a closeness that the separate way can never quite provide. Whole families combining their little efforts into something none could have managed alone. It was never really about the prize in the end. It was about the joining, and the joining was the finest thing the stamps ever did. Step out onto the front porch, because the neighbours are talking again. Over the fence and across the driveway, everyone seemed to know what everyone else was working toward. A new radio for the Petersons, a camping tent for the family down the block. There was no meanness in the comparing, only a warm, shared interest, the pleasant nosiness of people who genuinely liked knowing one another. Saving was a private household matter, and yet somehow it belonged to the whole street at the same time. It is a warm evening, and the porches up and down the block are occupied, as porches were in those years, with people taking the cool of the day and passing the time. The talk drifts easily from yard to yard, over fences and across driveways, the small news of the neighbourhood exchanged in the unhurried way of people who have known one another a long while, and expect to go on knowing one another a long while yet. And somewhere in that talk, as often as not, the subject of the stamps arises. Everyone knew what everyone else was saving toward. It was not a secret the way a bank balance might be, not a thing people guarded. It came up naturally in the ordinary talk of the week, and so the whole street kept a loose-running knowledge of each household's small ambitions. The Petersons were after a new radio, everyone knew, had been saving toward it for months. The family down at the corner wanted a camping tent for their summer trips. The young couple 2 doors down were slowly furnishing their front room, a piece at a time. There was no meanness in the comparing, no sharp edge of envy or competition beneath the friendly talk. It was only interest, warm and genuine, the pleasant nosiness of people who liked one another and liked knowing one another's business in the good-natured way of a close street. When the Petersons finally redeemed their radio, the whole block was glad for them and said so, and came round to hear it play. When the tent came at last for the family at the corner, the children up and down the street were nearly as excited as the family's own. The porch talk turned often to strategy too, to the swapping of small wisdoms about the saving. Which store was running double stamps this week, and when? Which shop gave the most generous count? How many books this or that prize had taken? for those who had already redeemed it and could report back. It was a kind of shared knowledge, passed freely along the fence line, and it helped everyone save a little smarter, reach their goals a little sooner. No one hoarded such tips. They were given away as easily as a cup of borrowed sugar and received as gladly, and there was, beneath it all, a gentle current of good-natured rivalry, the kind that spurred a person on without ever souring into real competition. If the Petersons were near their radio, well, you might just find yourself shopping a little more faithfully, filling your own books a little faster, wanting to reach your own goal before too much longer. It was not envy. It was more like encouragement, the whole street pulling one another along, each household's progress a small spur to the rest. Everyone saved a little harder for the friendly watching of the neighbours. It is a curious thing when you sit with it, how a matter so private could belong so much to the whole street at once. The stamps were saved in each home's own drawer, toward each home's own dream, by each home's own patient effort, and yet the whole neighbourhood shared in it, knew it, followed it, cheered it on. The saving was private and communal both, held close and shared wide at the same time, the way so much of life on a close street was in those years, when neighbours were something more than the strangers who happened to live nearby. The children, playing in the yards as the grown folk talked, absorbed all this without knowing they did. They knew what the neighbours were saving for as surely as their parents did, carried the news between houses, took a proprietary interest in the Petersons' radio and the Corner family's tent. It was part of the fabric of the neighbourhood that were growing up inside, this easy shared knowledge of one another's small hopes, and it taught them, quietly, that a street could be a kind of family too, watching out for one another, glad for one another, pulling one another along. You would not find much of that now, this open sharing of the small ambitions of a household, this warm neighbourly interest in what the family down the block was working toward. We keep more to ourselves these days, our porches emptier, our dreams more private. But there was a richness in the old way, in the belonging of it, in the sense that your small hopes were known and followed and cheered by the whole close circle of the street. The stamps were saved at home, but somehow warmly they belonged to the neighbourhood too. Take the trip downtown now to the big department store with its polished floors and its counters of gloves and hats. Stamps were waiting here too, given out with every purchase just as they were at the corner grocery. You could dress the family, furnish a room, buy a gift for a wedding, and walk out with a green strip for your trouble every single time. The whole city, it seemed, ran on the same quiet system, and your little book at home grew from a dozen different doors. The trip downtown was an occasion, in those years, not the casual errand it might seem now. You dressed for it, a little. You made a day of it, or half a day at least, and you took in several stores at once to make the journey worthwhile. And the grandest of them all was the big department store rising up over the main street with its wide windows and its revolving door, its many floors of goods, its air of a slightly finer world than the one you lived in day to day. Inside, the floors gleamed, polished to a shine that squeaked beneath your shoes, and the light came down soft and flattering from fixtures overhead. There were counters of gloves and hats and handkerchiefs, glass cases of jewellery and perfume, whole floors given over to clothing and furniture and the finer household goods. A hush lay over it all, a genteel quiet quite unlike the busy clatter of the corner grocery, and the clerks moved with a certain dignity, and to shop here felt like a small elevation of the ordinary self, and here too in this finer world the stamps were waiting. Make a purchase at any counter, a pair of gloves, a length of cloth, a gift for a coming wedding, and the clerk would count out a green strip along with your change, just as the grocer did across town. It struck you sometimes, the reach of it, how the same little stamps that came with your flour and your gasoline came also with the fine goods of the grand department store. High and low, the whole city ran on the same quiet green system, and your book at home grew from every kind of door. You could clothe the whole family here and earn stamps for the doing of it, shoes for the children, a dress for yourself, a shirt and tie for a husband, and a strip of green with each. You could furnish a room, a lamp here, a chair there, and add the stamps from those purchases to the store at home. You could buy a wedding gift for a niece, something fine and proper, and walk out having given a good gift and earn toward your own dream in the same stroke. The stamps followed every dollar, no matter how fine the counter it was spent at. There was a pleasant doubling in this, a sense of getting twice over. You had come downtown to buy the things you needed, and you got them, and you got besides the green reward that came with them, the small forward step toward the prize at home. The finer purchases earned the longer strips naturally, $1 being $1 wherever it was spent. And so a good day's shopping downtown might fatten the book considerably, might bring the distant dream a real step nearer, all while you saw to the ordinary business of dressing and furnishing a family's life. It gave you a sense, standing in the grand store with its polished floors, of the true reach of the whole arrangement, of how it wove itself through every level of a city's life. Not just the humble corner grocery, but the grand department store. Not just the flour and the fuel, but the gloves and the hats and the wedding gifts. The stamps were everywhere, given at every kind of counter, gathered from every kind of purchase, and they flowed from all these many doors into the same small books in the same kitchen drawers all across the city. It was a system, vast and quiet and complete, and you were a small, faithful part of it. The children, brought along on the downtown trip as a treat, felt the finer air of the great store and behaved mostly a little better for it. They gawked at the glittering counters, pressed their faces to the glass cases, rode the escalators up and down until they were told to stop, and they watched too as the stamps came with each purchase here just as at home, learning that the green reward followed the family even into this grand and gleaming place, that the saving went on wherever the spending did. You would gather your parcels at the end of the day, tired and satisfied, the family clothed or the room furnished or the gift bought, and tuck the day's strips of green safely away with the rest. And on the drive home you might reflect, if you were the reflecting sort, on the quiet vastness of it, the whole city humming along on the same small system, high counters and low, all of it flowing toward the books at home. Your little book grew from a dozen different doors, and every door, grand or humble, gave its faithful green. Here comes the sweetness of the first redemption. After weeks of steady saving, you finally have enough books for something small but real. Perhaps it's a toaster, gleaming and new. Perhaps it's a mixer for the kitchen counter, the kind you'd been eyeing in the catalogue for months. It is not extravagant, and it did not cost you a single extra $1, and that is exactly why it feels so good. You earned it slowly, and slowness made it yours in a way that money alone never could. The books are ready at last, the necessary number filled and checked, and you can hardly quite believe it. It seems only a little while ago that you began, the first stamp pressed into the first square of the first fresh page, the goal so distant then as to feel almost imaginary. And now here you are, the book stacked and full, the prize within reach. The long, slow saving arrived at its first sweet destination. There is a particular pleasure in this first redemption that the later ones, however grand, never quite match. It is the pleasure of a thing proven, of the whole patient system shown at last to truly work. You had chosen it carefully, the first prize, poring over the catalogue for weeks before settling. It could not be too grand, not for a first redemption, not with only these first few books to spend. But it must be something real, something wanted, something that would earn its place in the household and remind you daily of the saving that had brought it. And so you settled in the end on the toaster, gleaming and chrome, or the mixer for the counter, the very one you had studied so long in the bright catalogue pages. And now it is coming home. Whether you carry the books downtown yourself or send away for the prize, the day arrives when the thing itself is in your hands, boxed and new, smelling of its packing and its factory newness. You unwrap it at the kitchen table with the children crowding round, and there it is, real and solid and yours, the very object you had dreamed over all those weeks, no longer a picture in a catalogue, but a thing you can touch and hold and use. It is not extravagant, that must be said. It is a toaster, a mixer, a small and ordinary household good, the kind of thing a person might buy outright on any ordinary day without a second thought. There is nothing rare about it, nothing fine, nothing that would turn a neighbour's head, and yet it means more to you than a far grander thing bought outright ever could, and the reason is simple. It did not cost you a single extra dollar. You earned it slowly out of the ordinary business of living, and that earning made it yours in a way that mere buying never does. That is the secret at the heart of it, the thing the whole arrangement understood about the human heart. A thing worked toward is worth more than the thing simply had. The toaster bought outright is only a toaster, but the toaster earned across weeks of faithful saving, dreamed over, planned for, reached at last through patience and small daily effort. That toaster is something else entirely. It carries the weight of the saving inside it. Every time you use it, you remember faintly what it cost you, not in dollars but in patience, and the remembering is a small pleasure in itself. You find it its place on the counter, and it gleams there, new and bright among the older familiar things. And for a while at least you notice it every time you pass, feel the small glow of it, the proof made solid that the saving worked. The children want to see it used, and so you use it. That first morning, the toast popping up golden and the mixer whirring its bright new whir. And there is a small festivity in it, a christening of the hard-won prize. The neighbours will hear of it, of course, over the fence and across the driveway, and they will be glad for you, and perhaps a little spurred toward their own goals by the sight of yours achieved. And you will feel, telling them, the modest pride of a thing earned rather than merely bought, the quiet satisfaction of the patient saver whose patience has borne its first fruit. It is a small triumph, but it is a real one, and the small real triumphs are the ones that fill a life most warmly. Best of all, the reaching of this first prize does not end the saving, but renews it. For already, even as you find the toaster its place, your eye is turning back to the catalogue, to the next thing, the grander thing, the further goal now made suddenly believable by this first success. If the toaster could be reached, why not the next? And so the books come out again, and the saving begins afresh, sweetened now by the sure knowledge, held solid in a gleaming chrome proof upon the counter, that the slow way truly does arrive, in the end, at the wanted thing. But some prizes asked for more, and those were the ones that taught you patience. A bicycle for a child's birthday, planned for so far in advance that the child never suspected. A proper lamp for the parlour, or a set of luggage for a trip you hope to take one day. These took months, sometimes the better part of a year, and every trip to the market became a small deposit toward them. The waiting was long, but the wanting kept the whole family gently pointed towards something good. There was a difference in kind, not just degree, between the small prizes and the large. The toaster you might reach in a matter of weeks, a quick sweet reward that renewed your faith in the saving. But the large prizes were another matter. Month upon month of unbroken effort, a discipline of patience quite beyond anything the small ones asked. And it was in the reaching for these, the truly large goals, that the whole enterprise taught its deepest lesson, the plain, hard, beautiful lesson of wanting a thing and waiting for it well. Consider the bicycle, planned in secret for a child's birthday still half a year off. You began saving toward it in the quiet months of winter perhaps, when the birthday lay far ahead and the child suspected nothing. And all through the slow filling of the books you kept the secret, deflecting the child's own catalogue wishes, saying nothing, letting the surprise build in secret even as the books built in the drawer. It took a special patience, this. The patience of the long, secret plan. The reward postponed and postponed until at last, on the very day, it could be revealed in all its shining glory. Or the lamp for the parlour, the proper one, the good one you had wanted for years to replace the shabby thing that had served too long. This was no birthday surprise, but a slow household ambition, saved toward month by month with no fixed deadline, only the steady wish to have at last a fine thing for the front room. And each trip to the market became a small deposit toward it, each strip of green a stone laid in a long, slow building, until one day, far off, the lamp would stand at last in the parlour, worth every week of the waiting. Or the luggage, saved toward a trip you hoped one day to take, a trip perhaps not yet even fixed, only dreamed of, a someday journey to somewhere you had always meant to go. The luggage was the dream made partly solid, the first concrete step toward a hope still mostly wish. And so you saved toward it slowly, and as the books filled, you let yourself imagine the trip a little more fully, the where and the when of it, the luggage and the journey growing together in your mind across the long patient months of saving. These large goals took months, sometimes the better part of a year, of unbroken faithful effort. There could be no lapses, no diversions to the small, quick prizes, if the large one was to be reached. Every stamp had to go toward it, every book, every double stamp day seized and spent toward the single distant end. It asked a real discipline, a real holding of the course across a long stretch of ordinary time, and in the asking it built that discipline, strengthened it, taught the whole family the muscle of patience that serves a person all their life. Every trip to the market became, in this way, a small deposit toward the distant dream. The ordinary errand took on a quiet significance, a sense of forward motion, of building toward something good. You did not merely shop, you saved. You laid another small stone in the long, slow wall of the goal, and there was a satisfaction in that, in the sense that even the dullest necessary errand was carrying you, however slightly, toward the thing you truly wanted. It gave the ordinary a direction, a purpose, a gentle forward lean. The waiting was long, there is no denying it. Months of it, sometimes the better part of a year, the goal creeping nearer so slowly that on any given week it seemed hardly to move at all. But the wanting sustained the waiting, kept it from souring into mere frustration. As long as you wanted the thing and wanted it steadily, the waiting was not a burden but an anticipation, a long, slow savouring of a joy still to come. The whole family stayed gently pointed toward the distant good, and the pointing itself was a kind of happiness. And when at last the long saving arrived, when the final book was filled and the great prize won, the joy of it was proportioned to the waiting. The bicycle revealed on the birthday morning, the child's face a sunrise of astonished delight. The lamp at last in the parlour, lighting the front room with its long-awaited glow. The luggage by the door, the dreamed-of trip made suddenly thrillingly real. These were joys that the quick small prizes could never match. Joys deepened and enriched by every week of the patient waiting that had earned them. The bigger the dream, the longer the wait, and the longer the wait, the sweeter, in the end, the arriving. It is autumn now, and thoughts turn toward the holidays. For many families, Christmas was built stamp by stamp across the whole of the year. A toy set aside in secret, a watch for a husband, a game the children had circled in the catalogue without knowing it would truly appear. There was a special satisfaction in giving a gift that had cost no extra money, only time and attention, and the steady faith that the books would fill in time. Under the tree, those gifts carried a whole year of quiet effort. The turning of the year toward autumn brought with it always the first quiet thoughts of Christmas, still months off but no longer unimaginably distant. And for the family that saved its stamps, Christmas was not a thing to be scrambled toward in the frantic final weeks, but a thing prepared for slowly, quietly, across the whole long year that led to it. The books had been filling all along toward this, whether the children knew it or not, and now, as autumn came on, the shape of the coming holiday began to reveal itself in the growing store. Much of it was secret, of course. That was half the pleasure. A toy set aside in the mind months ago, saved toward in silence. The child who wanted it never suspecting that the wanting had been noticed and quietly acted upon. A watch for a husband chosen from the catalogue and worked toward through the long ordinary weeks, kept hidden even as the books that would buy it filled in the very drawer he opened daily without a thought. The whole family's Christmas taking shape in secret, hidden in plain sight among the loose stamps and the working books. The children played their unwitting part in it too. They circled things in the catalogue as children will, lobbying loudly for this toy and that game, never dreaming that their circling was being watched, that the very thing they pointed to might be filling a book even now in secret. And come Christmas morning, there it would be, the circled thing itself, materialized beneath the tree as if by magic, and the child's astonished joy the sweeter for the long secret saving no one had ever let slip. There was a special satisfaction in the giving of these gifts, a satisfaction quite beyond the ordinary pleasure of a present given. For these gifts had cost no extra money, not a single dollar beyond what the family would have spent regardless on its ordinary living. They were bought, in a sense for free, out of the small green rewards of a year of necessary errands, and so to give them was to give something conjured out of thin air, out of patience and attention and the faithful filling of books, a gift made from nothing but care and time. That was the quiet genius of the stamp-saved Christmas, and the poorer family felt it most keenly of all. For a household where every dollar was spoken for, where a lavish Christmas might otherwise have been simply beyond reach, the stamps opened a door. Across the long year, out of the ordinary spending that had to happen anyway, a Christmas could be built that the family could never have afforded outright. The toys, the watch, the games, all of them earned rather than bought. all of them the fruit of a year's patient gathering. The stamps made possible a generosity that money alone would have forbidden. The autumn weeks, then, took on a quiet purposefulness. The saving intensified, the goals firmed up, the secret plans were laid and adjusted. You watch the catalogue with a sharper eye now, weighing the children's wishes against the books in hand, calculating what could be reached by December and what could not. It was a season of quiet reckoning, of careful hidden planning, of a household bending its long year's saving toward the single bright morning that would justify it all. And when at last the morning came, when the tree stood lit and the gifts lay beneath it and the children came tumbling down in the early dark, the whole long year's effort found its reward. The circled toy unwrapped with a shriek of joy. The watch received with a husband's quiet, pleased surprise. The game the children had wanted, their real theirs, as if the wanting itself had summoned it. And behind each gift, invisible to the delighted eyes that received them, lay the whole patient year, the ordinary errands, the licked stamps, the faithfully filled books, all of it distilled at last into this single morning of giving. Under the tree, those gifts carried a whole year of quiet effort, though no one unwrapping them would have thought to see it there. That was as it should be. The effort was meant to be invisible, hidden inside the gift like the glue behind a stamp, felt rather than seen. But it was there, in every stamp-bought present, the long, slow, patient love of a family that had gathered all year, out of nothing, toward this one bright morning of giving. And that perhaps was the finest thing the little green stamps ever made possible. A Christmas conjured out of patience and given freely, and treasured all the more for the long invisible saving that had brought it into being. Picture a young couple now, just starting out with more hope than money. Their first apartment is nearly bare, but they have their saver books, and they have time. A little at a time the rooms begin to fill, a set of glasses, a pot, a small clock for the mantel, each one redeemed rather than bought outright. It was slow work building a home this way, but there was a real tenderness in it, in furnishing a life together out of patience and pennies and stamps saved side by side. They had married young, as people did, with love enough and to spare but little money to their name, and the first apartment showed it. The rooms were near bare when they moved in. A few sticks of furniture handed down or bought second-hand, the walls plain, the cupboards empty. It might have seemed a hard beginning, all that emptiness, all those bare rooms waiting to be filled, but they did not see it so. They saw only possibility, only the good long work of making a home together, and they set about it gladly. And they had the stamps, that was the thing. They had their saver books, begun even before the wedding perhaps, and they had time, all the time in the world, the whole long future of a marriage just beginning. They could not fill the rooms all at once, not with money, not with the little they had, but they could fill them slowly, stamp by stamp, book by book, redeeming the household goods a piece at a time as their patient saving allowed. The bare rooms did not daunt them. They were simply the beginning of the story. So the filling began, a little at a time, in the order of need and want. A set of glasses first, perhaps, redeemed with the first filled books, so they might drink their evening water from something better than jam jars. Then a good pot for the little kitchen, so the young wife might cook proper suppers. Then a small clock for the mantel to mark the hours of their new shared life. Each thing arrived not bought outright in a single flush of spending, but earned, slowly, out of the ordinary saving of a careful young pair just starting out. There was a rhythm to it that suited the slow building of a marriage. As they learned each other, learned the shape of their shared days, learned what a home was and what they wanted theirs to be, The rooms filled around them at the same patient pace. Nothing came all at once. Everything came in time, and the home they built this way was not the sudden furnished thing of a wealthier couple, but a slow accretion, a gathering, each object arriving in its season and carrying with it the memory of the saving that had earned it. There was a real tenderness in this, in the furnishing of a shared life out of patience and pennies and stamps saved side by side. They filled their books together, the young husband and wife, at their own small kitchen table in the evenings, licking the stamps and pressing them home and dreaming over the catalogue of what to reach for next. It was a shared labour, a shared dreaming, one of the first of the countless small shared enterprises that would, over the years, weave two lives into one. The stamps were not really about the glasses or the pot or the clock. They were about the doing of it together, and there was a lesson in it too, absorbed young, that would serve them the whole long marriage through. That a home was not bought but built. That good things came slowly in their season to those who saved and waited. That the having of a thing at once was a lesser pleasure than the slow earning of it together. They learned patience in those bare first rooms, learned it in their bones, and the patience learned there would carry them through harder things than empty cupboards in the years still ahead. The children, when they came, would grow up among these slowly gathered things, never knowing the bareness of the beginning, taking for granted the glasses and the pot and the clock on the mantel that had once been the hard-won prizes of their parents' patient saving. And perhaps some day one of them starting out in turn would remember, and would begin their own saver books, and would furnish their own first bare rooms a stamp at a time, and the slow tender way of building a home would pass down another generation. Look back at that young couple then, in their bare first rooms with their saver books and their hope, and their whole long future before them. They had little money, but they had each other, and they had time, and they had the patient green promise of the stamps. And a little at a time, out of nothing much they built a home and a life, side by side at the kitchen table, licking stamps and dreaming and filling their books toward the small good things that would furnish their shared days. There are worse ways to begin a marriage. There are few perhaps more tender. Let us honour the person who usually kept the books, because more often than not it was the woman of the house. In an era when so much of the money was not hers to command, the stamp book was a small territory of her own, a way to make the household budget stretch and bloom into something the family could see and touch. There was a quiet power in it, a private satisfaction in turning ordinary errands into a lamp, a chair, a gift. It was thrift made into something almost like art. It was she who kept the books mostly, the woman of the house. She who did the shopping and gathered the stamps and licked them and pasted them and tallied the slow progress toward the goal. The stamps were woven through the work that was hers, the marketing and the housekeeping and the feeding of the family, and so it fell to her naturally to tend them, to keep the books in order, to steer the whole slow enterprise of the saving. And in that tending she found something that mattered more, perhaps, than the family quite understood. For it was an era when so much of the money was not hers to command. The wages, in most homes, were earned by the husband and largely directed by him, the big decisions his to make, the purse in the end his to hold. This was simply how things were arranged in those years, and most women navigated it as best they could, finding their room to move within the space they were allowed. And the stamp book, small as it was a room to move in, a territory of her own within the larger economy of the home. The stamps were hers, in a way the wages were not. They came from her errands, her careful shopping, her daily labour of running the household, and what they bought was hers to decide, near enough, the small prizes and the large, the lamp for the parlour and the gift for the niece and the surprise for the children's Christmas. Within the modest bounds of the stamp book, she was the one who chose, the one who planned, the one who directed the slow accumulation toward the ends she judged best. It was a small autonomy, but a real one, and she prized it. There was a genuine skill in it too, a household art she practiced and perfected over the years. To make the budget stretch, to shop shrewdly, to time the big purchases to the double stamp days, to squeeze the most green from every dollar, this took cleverness and attention and long practice. And to plan the saving well, to choose the right goals and reach them in the right order, to balance the quick small prizes against the long grand ones, this took judgment of a high and subtle kind. The well-kept book was the mark of a woman who understood these arts and understood them deeply. And out of these ordinary errands she made, through the alchemy of the stamps, real and lasting things the family could see and touch. A lamp for the parlour, conjured out of nothing but faithful shopping, a chair, a clock, a set of dishes, all of them summoned from the small green rewards of the daily marketing. It was a kind of magic when you looked at it rightly, this turning of ordinary errands into solid household goods. The grocery trips that vanished into the family's stomachs left behind through the stamps, these permanent tokens, these lasting proofs of her careful management. Thrift made into something almost like art. There was a quiet power in this, and a quiet satisfaction, both of which she felt keenly, even if she never spoke of them. The power of a small domain truly her own, a book she kept, and a saving she directed and prizes she chose. The satisfaction of a thing done well, of books kept neat, and goals well chosen and reached, of a family's small comfort steadily provided out of her own careful art. It was not the power of the wage earner, nor the satisfaction of the world's larger stages, but it was real, and it was hers, and in an era that allowed her little enough of either, she held it close and made the most of it. The family mostly did not see it this way. They saw only that the prizes came, that the lamp appeared, and the dishes and the Christmas gifts that somehow, through their mother's mysterious economy, good things arrived without seeming to cost anything. They took it for granted, as families take for granted the labour of the one who holds them together. They did not see the skill in it, the power in it, the quiet satisfaction she drew from her small green domain. But it was there, whether they saw it or not, tended faithfully in the working book in the kitchen drawer. So let us honour her, the keeper of the books, the woman who turned the ordinary errands of a household into lamps and chairs and gifts through the patient art of the stamps. In a world that gave her little enough to command, she made of the stamp book a territory of her own, and ruled it wisely, and drew from it a power and a satisfaction the family scarcely guessed at. It was a small thing, the Savour book, but in her careful hands it became something almost like art, and something almost like freedom, and it deserves to be remembered as both. The day has finally come. The books are full, checked and rechecked at the kitchen table, and now you are driving downtown to the redemption centre to claim what you've earned. There is a flutter of anticipation in your chest, the same feeling you had as a child on the way to somewhere wonderful. You park the car, gather the books in your arms and walk toward the doors, hardly able to believe that all those small green stamps have added up, at last, to this. You would check the books the night before, and again this morning, unable quite to trust that the long saving was truly done. You counted the finished ones twice over, ran your finger down the filled pages to be sure no square had been missed, held them in your two hands to feel the honest weight of them, and they were full, all of them, the necessary number reached at last after all these patient weeks. There was nothing left to do but go and claim the prize, and so, this morning, you are going. The drive downtown has a different feel to it today, brighter somehow, more charged. You've made this same drive 100 times on ordinary errands, but today it carries you towards something long awaited, and the familiar streets slip by with a new significance. There, the market where so many of these stamps were earned. There, the station where the rest were gathered, and ahead, growing nearer, the redemption centre itself, where the whole long saving would find its reward at last. There is a flutter in your chest as you drive, and you recognize it after a moment, with a small private smile. It is the feeling you had as a child on the way to somewhere wonderful, the fair perhaps, or a promised outing, the old pure anticipation of a joy you knew was coming and could hardly wait to reach. You had not expected to feel it, a grown person on a grown errand. But there it is, unmistakable, the child's own delicious impatience, alive again in you on this bright particular morning. The books ride on the seat beside you, safe and full, and now and then you glance over at them as though to be sure they're still there, still real, still full of all those faithfully gathered stamps. It seems hardly believable, when you think of it, that these modest books hold the whole of the long saving, that all those hundreds of trips to the store, all those licked and pasted stamps, all those patient weeks, have come down at last to these few slim volumes on the seat beside you. And yet they do. The proof is in your hands. Downtown, you find a place to park and pull the car to the curb, and for a moment you simply sit, the engine ticking as it cools, gathering yourself before the long-awaited moment. Then you gather the books into your arms, holding them close against you the way you might hold something precious, and step out onto the sidewalk. The redemption centre stands just ahead, its windows bright, its doors waiting, and you walk toward it with the books held tight and the child's flutter still alive in your chest. You pass others on the sidewalk, some of them carrying books of their own, and you exchange with them a small knowing look, the look of people on the same happy errand. For the redemption centre drew them from all over the city, all these patient savers arriving at last to claim what they had earned, and there was a companionable feeling in the shared pilgrimage, a sense of belonging to a great quiet fellowship of the thrifty and the patient. You were not alone in this. You were one of many, and the many were glad this morning together. At the door you pause just for a breath, the books heavy and full in your arms, the moment arrived that you had worked toward for so long. All those weeks, all those errands, all those evenings at the kitchen table, all of it distilled now into this single instant on the threshold of the redemption centre, the prize a few steps away, the long saving all but done. You take a breath. You reach for the door, and you can hardly believe even now that all those small green stamps have added up at last to this. It is worth pausing on that threshold before we step through, to feel the full weight of what it meant. Not the prize itself, whatever it was, but the arriving at it. The long patience rewarded, the slow faith justified, the proof held solid in your arms, that small things gathered faithfully do indeed add up, that the slow way arrives, that patience bears its fruit in the end. You stand at the door with your full books and your fluttering heart, and behind you lies the whole long saving, and before you lies the prize, and in this one bright suspended moment the two are joined at last. Then you open the door and step inside, and the long-awaited day begins. Step inside and let your eyes adjust to the wonder of it. The redemption centre is a showroom of dreams made real, shelves and shelves of the very things you had studied in the catalogue for months, small appliances gleaming under the lights, toys and clocks and radios, luggage stacked in neat towers. You wander slowly down the aisles, and for a little while you're simply a person surrounded by possibility, every item a reward that someone somewhere was saving toward just as you had. The door swings shut behind you, and for a moment you simply stand, letting your eyes adjust to the bright interior, taking in the wonder of the place. For it was a wonder, the redemption centre, a room full of every good thing you had dreamed over in the catalogue, all of it here, solid and real, no longer flat pictures on glossy pages, but actual objects you could walk among and touch. After all the months of imagining, to see them here in the flesh was a small marvel, and you took a moment to let the marvel settle before you moved. The catalogue had made these things familiar to you, studied as you had studied them across so many evenings at the kitchen table. And now here they were, the very things themselves, stepped out of the pages and into the world. There was the toaster you had dreamed of, gleaming under the showroom lights. There, the mixer, the very model. There, the luggage, the lamp, the clock, all of them lifted from imagination into solid three-dimensional fact. It was like walking into your own daydream, made suddenly real around you. You began to wander the aisles, slowly, in no hurry, savouring it. The small appliances gleamed on their shelves, chrome and enamel catching the light. Toys were ranged in bright ranks, the wagons and the games and the dolls. Clocks ticked in a row, radios stood ready to play, luggage was stacked in neat, handsome towers. Row upon row of it, shelf upon shelf, a whole room full of the small comforts and pleasures that the stamps could buy, and every last piece of it earned rather than bought, waiting for some patient saver to come and claim it. For a little while you were simply a person surrounded by possibility, and it was a fine feeling, a rare one. You had your full books in your arms and the freedom near enough to choose, and the whole bright room lay open before you. You did not have to hurry. You did not have to settle at once on the thing you had come for. You could wander and look and let yourself want, and imagine the next goal even as you claimed this one. The showroom gave you that gift, the brief sweet freedom of standing amid plenty with the means to take a share of it home. And you understood, wandering there, that you were not alone in it. Every item on every shelf was a reward that someone somewhere was saving toward, just as you had saved toward yours. Each toaster and clock and radio stood at the end of some other family's patient months, some other kitchen table's evenings of licking and pasting, some other drawer's slow-filling books. The whole room was a monument to patience, to the quiet, faithful saving of countless households all across the city, all of it converging here, in this bright showroom, this temple of small, hard-won dreams. You paused before the thing you had come for, the goal of all your saving, and there it was, real and solid and within reach at last. You picked it up, perhaps, turned it in your hands, felt the honest weight of it, the very object you had studied so long in the catalogue now warm and actual in your grasp. It was everything you had imagined, and, in its plain reality, somehow more. The picture had promised, the thing itself delivered, and it was yours, or about to be, earned across all those patient weeks and waiting now only for the handing over of the books. But you lingered a moment longer before you claimed it, wandering just a little more among the shelves, because the showroom cast a spell that was hard to break. There was so much here, so much possibility, so many other dreams a person might save toward next. Your eye caught on this and that, on the grander things beyond your present means, on the goals for next year and the year after. The showroom did not merely reward the saving already done, it kindled the saving still to come, sent you home already dreaming of the next book, the next goal, the next bright morning at these very doors. At last you turned toward the counter, your chosen prize in hand, ready to complete the long-awaited transaction. But you carried with you the memory of the showroom, the wonder of that bright room full of every dream made real, the brief, sweet freedom of standing amid plenty with full books in your arms. It was a fine thing, the redemption centre, finer than the mere prize it dispensed. It was the place where patience met its reward, where the long, slow saving of a whole city came at last to its shining fulfilment, and to walk its aisles was to walk among the solid proof that small, faithful things do, in the end, add up to wonders. And so we come to the quiet end of it, back out of that green-tinted world and into the soft dark of your own room. We have walked a long day together, you and I. We licked the stamps at the kitchen table and pressed them into their little squares. We dreamed over the catalogue under the lamplight, doing the gentle arithmetic of how many books it would take. We drove downtown at last, the finished books heavy in our arms, and carried home a prize that had cost no dollars at all, only patience and time and care. And behind all of it stood the people, the mother who kept the books and turned ordinary errands into a lamp for the parlour, the grandmother with her faithful shoebox who would not waste a single stamp, the children pasting crooked pages and laughing over the taste of the glue, the neighbours comparing notes across the fence, glad for one another's small victories. They did not think they were living in a golden age. They were just holding a life together, one green stamp at a time, the way people always have. There is something in their patience worth carrying forward, so the next time you want a thing, let yourself want it slowly. Let the wanting be part of the pleasure. And the next time an ordinary moment passes through your hands, a small reward, a quiet evening, someone you love near the lamplight, notice it. Let it count. So tonight, as your eyes grow heavy and the room goes soft around you, remember that the good life was never the grand one. It was the small one, tended faithfully, day by ordinary day. Rest now. You have gathered enough for today, and the drawer quietly is a little fuller than it was. Good night.